Franchise moves are not always the best thing, especially when you move from a established market in your sport to a less than enthusiastic market in a sense. Baseball, the first thought would be like moving the athletics. Well, from Philly to Kansas City is one thing, and then move from Kansas City to Oakland. I mean, Oakland, not really much for baseball and all that. Although they were good in the Pacific Coast League in a less than ideal market. I would have said Expos to Washington, but Washington kind of is a baseball market in a sense. So yeah, not much comes to mind in baseball. In hockey, there too much has come to mind, especially the Nordiques moving from Quebec City to Colorado. I mean, I get it with the small market thing, but moving it from a hockey mad province to a state that doesn't really embrace hockey too much, well, at the time. And then you move Winnipeg to Phoenix to Arizona, of all places. You could have moved it to Kansas City or back to Minnesota or, even to Wyoming. It would have worked out. And in football, you know, I can't really say Browns to Baltimore because Baltimore was kind of pining for a football market and they did have the CFL at the time. I don't know too much about it. I mean, Vegas, kind of Oakland to Vegas, even though Oakland played in one of the shittiest stadiums around. Maybe that move to Vegas was bad. And basketball, I mean, moving a team from New Orleans to Utah. I mean, Utah, not much for professional sports because of their Mormon values and all that. The hockey move I didn't respond with was also another move that the NHL decided to make. It was weird how the NHL in 95 moved a team from one city to the other. 96, they did the same thing. And then in 1997, they did the same. So 3 relocations in 3 years. Kind of pathetic, don't you think? But anyway, let's take a look at the third relocation on the list. It's the Carolina Hurricanes. Hello out there, we're on the air. It's Cutter, what if NHL time? Tensions blow, the whistle blown, and the pucks go down the ice. Some teams just want to win the cup and do it with a smile. Hey, that is cool. Up on the River Nile. Oh, the good old hockey game. Who will come out on top? Will a team get through the cup to the cup by any means necessary? Oh, the good old hockey game. It's the best game you can name. And I'm have no shame. I will simulate those hockey games. Woo! So the Carolina Hurricanes were not always in Carolina. I guess that was a given. But anyway, Hartford got the team first. Hartford, Connecticut was not much of a hockey market, but anyway, the the Canes started off as the Whalers in the WHA, and in 1972, the World Hockey Association decided to put a team in the New England area. They called themselves the New England Whalers because they were going to serve Massachusetts, Vermont, Maine, Rhode Island. Um, was it Massachusetts? Uh, Crapola. There's probably one or two states I forgot. But anyway, the Whalers would play in Springfield, Massachusetts at the Civic Center. They were going to play at the Hartford Civic Center, but their roof blew off, so they had to find another stadium or arena to play in. The Whalers did pretty well. I mean, their logo was kind of weird, the W and then the harpoon through it and all that. But, it's a different time. The 70s are different than the 2020s. We have to learn with it. Learn and grow. That's what everyone says. So, anyway, the Whalers were one of the 4 teams to go from the WHA to the NHL, alongside the Nordiques, the Oilers, and the Jets. How ironic that 3 of those 4 teams would move within 3 years. The Whalers were in Hartford, and they actually snatched up Gordie Howe, whose rights went from Houston to New England for the Whalers as Houston folded. So Gordie Howe was a Hartford Whaler, and in 1980, the team played well. I forgot to like I talked to all about the Hartford Whalers. I should have been Cliff's noting it, but too little too late. So Cliff's notes: Hartford 1986, they won over the Quebec Nordiques in the first round, but then lost the second round in our Game 7 heartbreaker to Claude Lemieux and the Canadiens, who then won the Stanley Cup. They had a big rivalry with Boston, played them a few times in the playoffs. Never got past the first round except for 1986. They were slowing down. Jeff Sanderson was a pretty good player. Peter Carmonas lied that he would keep the team in Hartford instead of moving it elsewhere, but he moved it to North Carolina, to Greensboro at the start. And then comes the Carolina Hurricanes. As I said, not a real ideal hockey market. Winnipeg moving to Phoenix definitely was not ideal. Quebec moving to Colorado, meh. Colorado at least had a team one time. And then you're moving a team to North Carolina. Of course, the NHL would put an expansion team in Atlanta. But nevertheless, the Carolina Hurricanes were a pretty good squad. They were decent and all that. In 1999, they made the playoffs, lost to Boston in six, and then Steve Chason decided to drive home drunk and die in a truck accident. Carolina in 2002 would make one of the most fantastic finals appearances of all time. They were doomed to lose to the New Jersey Devils, who were two-time Eastern champions. But somehow they beat the Devils. Then they took out the Montreal Canadiens thanks to the Molson Miracle, in which they went to the Molson Center. Well, what was known as the Molson Center in Montreal. Now it's the Bell Center. Or is it the Molson Center? Nevertheless, I think it's Bell. So anyway, they went to Montreal to play. Game 4, Montreal had a chance to go up 3-1 and almost certainly move on to the conference final. And then Carolina scored 3 goals in the third period to tie and then to win the game in overtime thanks to Nick Wallin. Carolina won that series. Montreal went ape over Kerry Fraser's mistakes in Game 4, and Doug Gilmour slammed the penalty door shut so badly it's shattered. Carolina would face my beloved Toronto Maple Leafs, and thanks to Arturs Orbe in a very low-scoring game, series, the Canes won in 6. Marcelona scoring his overtime goals before being the hero in 2004 for the Flames. They got to the finals. They won Game 1 against Detroit, but got swept aside the rest of the way. Now, of course, the rule for these what ifs is I don't what if finals and all that. If you make the finals, then that doesn't count. That's for another sector. I'll probably do something like that soon. Nevertheless, I think that things happened. Carolina in 2006 were better, and Cam Ward came out of nowhere to win the Conn Smythe Trophy as playoff MVP. And Carolina took care of Edmonton in 7 games. I was cheering for Carolina because I cheer for the better team. Nationality doesn't matter. Carolina then in 2009 shocked Boston in the second round, went to the conference finals, but lost to the Penguins. And then they had that 14-game losing streak within the conference finals in history until this year when they beat Florida in Game 4 but lost Game 5. And Florida is in the Stanley Cup Finals as of this taping. So anyway, Carolina thought they knew what to do and all that. They have a good young team. Shnashnikov and Aho are pretty good players. But goaltending is always a question mark with Peter Kochetkov and Freddie Anderson. Of course, as a Leaf fan, I know about Freddie Anderson blowing it. But Carolina has had some great moments. So let's talk about the time they didn't make the Eastern Finals. And this was recent, 2024. So the Canes, it was the 45th season of play in the NHL franchise. It was established in 1979. And then, of course, the 26th season in Carolina after leaving Hartford. So the Hurricanes did their third straight 50-win season. And it looked pretty good. 52 wins. They missed the Metro by 3 points, as the New York Rangers would be the President's Trophy winners for best regular season. Islanders and Washington also qualified. Well, the top 3 qualified. And then 2 wildcards. But yeah, Washington qualified. Yeah, they qualified a long time. Tampa. Poor Detroit. Detroit had more wins. But the fact is, Washington won 32 regulation games. Detroit only won 27. That's what bit them in the butt. Tampa got one of the wild cards. So anyway, Carolina would take on the New York Islanders as the second best team in their division. They took on the third best team in their division. They could have swept the New York Islanders, but lost in double overtime in Game 4. No biggie. They won Game 5. And then against the New York Rangers, they gave up 3 straight losses, including 2 straight in overtime, 1 in double overtime. They won Games 4 and 5, but Game 6, the Rangers knew what they had to do and go to Carolina and win, and they would move on to get their butt handed to them by the Panthers. In the playoffs, Aho and Svechnikov with points of the but Seth Jarvis doing his job. Goaltending, Freddie Anderson was actually 13-2. I think he was hurt. Kochetkov had to come in for injury. Antti Ranta was the backup. So they had three goalies to worry about. Freddie Anderson would be the goalie in the playoffs and would not do that badly. Carolina traded Caleb Jones to Colorado for Callahan Berg. They picked up Ilya Lyubushkin from Anaheim and then later traded him to Toronto for a 6th-round pick. And then they made a massive move, getting Jake Gensel from Carolina for Michael Bunting, from Pittsburgh, and a conditional 1st or 2nd-round pick. And then on March 8th, they picked up Gino Kuznetsov from Washington for a 3rd-round pick, which was huge because Kuznetsov was a hero in Washington. They also got Michael Bunting free agency for 3 years. Brandon Lemieux from the Flyers for 1 year. Caleb Jones from Chicago, but they flipped him. They lost Patches to Washington. Other than that, nothing really. They signed a few players. Their draft picks, Bradley Nadeau. Of course, it's a little too early to talk about these guys. Felix Unger-Soren. If you know the thing with um, The Odd Couple, it's funny. So anyway, the Carolina Hurricanes should have made the conference final. Of course, as a New York Ranger guy, I really don't like it. But nevertheless, we're going to go on to the what if. So anyway, the 2024 Florida Panthers took on the 2024 Carolina Hurricanes. Bobrovsky versus Anderson would be the starting goalies and all that. Because Florida was the team that won the other conference semifinal. And Carolina beat them by a point to get home ice. Game 1 would see the Canes win 4-1. Florida did score Sam Reinhart, but Trevor Linen scoring twice, Aho and Fost. Finns, am I right? Trevor Linen, Aho, and Shea are your 3 stars of the game. Game 2 would see the Canes win again 4-1, but there were a lot more penalties. Seth Jarvis scored to make 1-0. Jesper Fast made it 2-0. Martin Nakash made it 3-0. Michael Bunting 4-0. And then Barkov made 4-1 to prevent Freddie Anderson from the hat trick. From the shutout. Him, Jarvis, and Nakash are your 3 stars. Game 3. In Florida, and the Panthers on home turf would win to force at least a Game 5. Barkov, Tkachuk, Matthew Tkachuk, that is, and Carter for Hagee's going for the Panthers. Jordan Martinook for the Canes. Carolina didn't need anyone to bite minutes. Evan Rodriguez got a minute 20 seconds. Bobrovsky, Anderson, Barkov, your 3 stars. So that are the goalies. Game 4 would see the Canes go into the game and win. Brad Pesce made it 1-0 Carolina. Barkov shorthanded, even though Lundell was in the box. 1-1. Seth Jarvis made 2-1 Canes, and then Eetil Luostarinen tied it at 2 to force overtime. Nothing in the first overtime. Matthew Tkachuk was penalized for a cross-check. Carolina did not take advantage of that. But at 33 minutes, 5 seconds of overtime, Svechnikov from Orlov and Bunting scored the goal, and Carolina is a 1-win away. Everyone played 19 minutes. Anderson, Bobrovsky, and Slavin were your stars. So Carolina with a chance to win the series. And they blow it. They blow this one, 4-3. Panthers were down 2-1 after two periods. Seth Jarvis with a pair. Sam Reinhart for Carolina. Well, for Florida. Carolina. Netcast made it 3-1. And then the Panthers tied it with Barkov and Matthew Tkachuk. Credit for Hagee scoring on the power play thanks to Shnachnikov's puck over glass trick. They only give Getzel 58 seconds. Wow. Reinhardt, Jarvis, and Barkov are your three stars. So on to game 6. And game 6 would see the Panthers win 3-2 to force a game 7 back in Carolina. Matthew Tkachuk and Ryan Lomberg for Florida. Steph Jarvis and Aho for Carolina. And then Lundell from Dajonovich and Forsling. What a name. Jonah Gajdanovic, 1342. Nice time. Bobrovsky, Jarvis, and Lomberg, your 3 stars. So on to game 7. And in the end, Carolina did not just do that. They just did not do that. They did. Carolina blows a 3-1 series lead and a chance at the Stanley Cup against the Oilers. A rematch of 2006 doesn't happen. Florida wins 2-1. Brady Shea scored for the Canes. Matthew Tkachuk for the Panthers. So it's 1-1 going to overtime at 8:35. William Lockwood, of all people, from Matthew Tkachuk. It's always the unknowns. And Lockwood scores, and the Carolina Hurricanes blow a 3-1 series lead and would not have gone to the Stanley Cup Finals. It would have been one of the worst conference final chokes of all time. William Lockwood got 14:47 of ice time. He's the third star. Bobrovsky and Tkachuk are your other stars. So, yeah, well, Bobrovsky, 41 shots, 40 saves. So Bobrovsky proving why he's good. Freddie Anderson is not the best. Florida hung on. Carolina thought they were going to win the series on home turf, but failed. That would have been a disastrous conference final for Carolina to blow a 3-1 series lead like that. Just inconceivable, but it was conceivable. Anyhow, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.